Well, let's go live to Tel Aviv now, and joining us is the Israeli Defence Force spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. Peter, good to see you. Thanks for your time this evening, your time. Firstly, before we get to local matters, I do want to get your response to comments that came from Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong, who called for a ceasefire with concerns around the hospitals. And she also said that Israel needed to be held to a higher standard than Hamas. What are your thoughts on those comments?
Good morning, Peter. Yes, indeed, we are being held to a higher standard. We are operating on a higher standard. There is nothing in comparison to how we are operating and to how Hamas are operating. They are intentionally putting their people at risk, and we are trying to get them out of harm's way. So while a ceasefire would be lovely, there are still 239 Israelis being held hostage by Hamas on this day 37 of the war, a war that we didn't ask for, a war that Hamas nevertheless brutally massacred and butchered our people. So basically, we are left currently without a choice. We have to take the war to Hamas and deal with them wherever they are hiding. Unfortunately, they've chosen a battleground, which is, it is nothing short of an abomination. When they intentionally position their command and control positions beneath hospitals, they were setting the battleground. We are in a huge effort now, Peter, to try and get people out of the hospital. We've evacuated thousands of people that were taking refuge in the compound, and there are still a few hundred people that need to be evacuated. In the meantime, we've also brought in some 300 litres of fuel in order to keep the energy going. Unfortunately, Hamas has prevented the energy from going in too. This is the enemy we face. It's a ruthless enemy. What type of ceasefire does this enemy suggest for Israel?
Right. I've just on those images, I've just seen those. We've been running them this morning. So 300 litres was dropped off. Why was it refused?
Hamas are only interested in death and destruction. There is no decency in them in order to deal with the people of Gaza. If you saw the images of our troops carrying the canisters of fuel, they were doing it under a risk of being shot at, being attacked themselves. But this is what we see is the right thing to do. It is what decent people do. The people of Gaza, we've said repeatedly, are not our enemy. And that is why we're trying to get them out of harm's way. And at this time, trying to get the fuel to the hospital. Okay. Hopefully that somebody in the hospital, the administrator, will wake up and realize that this fuel can benefit the people of Gaza.
Is 300 litres enough when thousands of litres are needed?
Of course, it's only for the immediate emergency needs. We are in an effort to try and evacuate babies, premature birth babies, out of the hospital, out of the premises. And indeed, we are trying to coordinate more evacuation of more people. But it is a drop that can keep the energy going in order to make sure that the babies in the incubators can stay alive. Why would they want to sacrifice that? I honestly don't know. It's beyond my understanding. It's an unfortunate situation in this war, but we are trying to mitigate those threats.
Is the IDF targeting hospitals in Gaza?
No, we've not targeted hospitals. We are conducting operations around hospitals indeed, but we are putting a huge effort in evacuation of hospitals. I want to tell you about one story that we revealed yesterday at the Rantisi hospital. There was a terrorist there holding up 1,000 people hostage in the hospital in order to safeguard himself. We evacuated the hospital with the terrorist and all of his henchmen, who then split off from the civilians that went down south. And then we engaged the terrorist, Ahmad Siam, in a school with his henchmen wherever they were hiding. But this is just the type of the reality we face. In that hospital currently, there are still a few people that are bedridden and obviously are being taken care of, but it's not the masses that were there. The reason we've been evacuating hospitals is precisely to get them out of harm's way. We've been now for a month, over a month since this war broke out. And for a month now, we've been calling on the people of northern Gaza to evacuate to the south, because the south is safer than the north. We are mobilized extensively in the north. There are ground operations. We are very determined to destroy and dismantle Hamas as a governing authority. They cannot be allowed to hold the power of government.
Just finally, Hamas has claimed that hostage negotiations are off because of what's going on at the hospital. Is that true?
No, I really can't take anything that Hamas says beyond the understanding that they are in a huge effort of psychological terrorism. This is an organization that butchers babies in their bedrooms. Why should we believe anything they say?
Okay, so negotiations are still on.
We're utilizing all of our efforts in order to bring home the hostages.
Right.
That's a national priority. 239, the young hostages, the youngest is 10 months old. They need to be brought home, and they need to be brought home now.
Peter, we're out of time, but thanks for your time this morning. That's Peter Lerner there from Tel Aviv.